Welcome. Thank you for lending an ear to the Voice of the Times for Friday, August 27, 2021. For today's editorial, Sticking to Evacuation Deadline, Biden's Leap of Faith. U.S. President Joe Biden has reached the point of no return in deciding to end evacuation operations at Kabul's international airport by August 31. He has stuck to his decision amid a crescendo of criticism that it was tantamount to abandoning thousands of Afghans who have served the U.S. and its Western allies and who are now vulnerable to Taliban persecution. The pace of the airlift has quickened, with 19,000 people flown out just last Wednesday. That translates to about one plane leaving every 39 minutes, according to the U.S. military. Other countries like Britain, France, and Germany have been sending in their own planes to get their people out of Afghanistan before the end of the month. About 80,000 people have been evacuated since the Taliban took over Kabul on August 15. Tens of thousands more are trying to leave, but the Taliban has closed all roads to the airport and ordered residents to stay at home. Biden is being pilloried for defending the August 31 deadline, but the situation at the Kabul airport points to an imminent threat if U.S. troops covering the evacuation are not pulled out by that date. "The sooner we can finish, the better," he said earlier this week. "Each day of operations brings added risk to our troops." The U.S. Embassy in Kabul has issued a security alert to the estimated 1,500 Americans stranded in the capital not to travel to the airport. Australia and Britain have issued a similar alert to its nationals. Even before the alerts were sent out, there had been reports that the airport could come under attack from the Afghan branch of the terrorist group Islamic State. A terrorist raid on the Kabul airport is the worst nightmare for the U.S. It could lead to American soldiers engaging in a firefight and the grim prospect of civilian casualties. This is the scenario Biden is trying his best to avoid. The sooner the evacuation is completed, the smaller the risk of that scenario happening. So, what happens to the Americans and the at-risk Afghans trapped in Kabul? There are several options, all of them requiring negotiations with Afghanistan's new government. The U.S. could ask the Taliban to reopen Kabul airport to commercial flights after the deadline while it rushes the processing of exit documents for its stranded nationals and at-risk Afghans. Or it could arrange for safe passage for them after August 31 so they can leave on mercy flights supervised by an international humanitarian organization like the Red Cross or the United Nations Refugee Agency. Negotiations may already be underway. The chief of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency was in secret talks with acknowledged Taliban leader Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar in Kabul last Monday. No details were released, but there is no question a deal involving the evacuation was high on the agenda. At this point, Biden must climb his way back from the fiasco of a chaotic pullout from Afghanistan and reestablish his image as someone who is in charge. He must come to grips with the fact that he has to negotiate with the enemy to save thousands of lives. He must also overcome the growing sentiment at home against resettling Afghan evacuees, who have already been maligned as unvetted refugees. It would be naive to believe that the negotiations with the Taliban will not involve concessions from the U.S. and other Western nations. Reparations for rebuilding Afghanistan's shattered economy could be one attractive incentive. International funding organizations like the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank have cut off funds for the country, but their wealthy patrons can be persuaded to turn the taps back on again. The concessions will, of course, have strings attached. The Taliban could be asked to relax its restrictions on women, for example, or vow not to unleash a wave of repression on the Afghans it perceives as traitors for having worked for Western organizations. But that is still far down the road. For now, we can only hope the last days of the evacuation will proceed without turmoil or violence. We can always hope for a miracle. And that's the editorial for August 27, 2021. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print. Subscribe to its digital edition or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and listen to the Voice with the Times.